free from the burden of human beings, may earth with many high slopes and great plains bearing plants, endowed with varied powers, spread out for us and show us her riches. The earth is my mother, and I am her child. Arthaveda Bhumi Sukta, hymn to the earth. Introduction. Humans, like most mammals, live on land. Land, as you may have noticed, has many forms of features. Its appearance changes a lot from one region to another. Suppose that you are traveling by road from the region known as Chota Nagpur in Jharkhand, reach Prayagraj in Uttar Pradesh, and go to Almora in Uttarakhand. On the way, you will see very different landscapes. In fact, you will encounter three major landforms, which we will now explore. A landform is a physical feature on the surface of our planet Earth. Landforms take shape over millions of years and have a significant connection with the environment and life. They can broadly be divided into three categories: mountains, plateaus, and plains. These landforms have different climates and are home to a variety of flora and fauna. Humans have adapted to all landforms, but the number of people living on different kinds of landforms varies throughout the world. Mountains. Mountains are landforms that are much higher than the surrounding landscape. They can be recognized by a broad base, steep slopes, and a narrow summit. Depending on their height, some mountains are covered with snow. At lower altitudes, the snow melts every summer and turns into water that feeds rivers. At high altitudes, the snow may never melt, leaving the mountain permanently snow capped. Other highlands with a lower height, less steep slopes, and rounded tops are called hills. Precipitation. Water from the atmosphere reaching the ground in any form, rain, snow, and hail are the most common forms of precipitation. What is snow? Unless you live in Himalayan regions such as Kashmir, Ladakh, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Sikkim, Arunachal Pradesh, you may never have seen snow. In the rest of India, most precipitation is in the form of rain and hail, but at higher altitudes, if it is cold enough, snow will fall, covering the landscape in a soft and beautiful white blanket. Snow and hailstones are nothing but precipitation of water in a solid state. Most of the world's mountains are grouped in mountain ranges, such as the Himalayas in Asia, the Alps in Europe, and the Andes in South America. Some of these ranges stretch for thousands of kilometers. Figure 3.2 shows pictures of six mountains of the world. Figure 3.3 brings them together to give a visual impression of their relative heights from the top to bottom. Mount Everest between Tibet and China and Nepal, and Kanchenjunga between Nepal and the Indian state of Sikkim are the two highest peaks of the Himalaya range. Mount Aconcagua in South America is the highest peak of the Andes. Mount Kilimanjaro in eastern Africa is an isolated mountain that is not part of any range. Mount Blanc in Western Europe is the highest mountain of the Alps. Annamuri in Canada, also known as Anai Peak, is the highest mountain in South India. Mountains with tall and sharp peaks like the Himalayas are relatively young, which means that they were formed recently in the Earth's history, but that is still millions of years ago. Shorter and more rounded mountains and hills like the Aravalli Range are much older and have been rounded by erosion. Sometimes, as with the Himalayas, upliftment as well as erosion continue to this day. You will learn more in science about such processes and their causes. Let us just say here that some mountains of the world, like the Himalayas, are still growing in height. Mountain environment. Mountain slopes are often covered with type of forest called mountain forest, where conifer trees such as pines, firs, spruce, and deodar are common. These conifer trees grow tall and cone-shaped, with thin pointed leaves. At higher altitudes, the trees give way to grasses, mosses, and lichen. Mountain forest. a type of forest that grows in mountainous region. Moss, a green plant without flowers or true roots, often spreading in a cushion-like cover. Lichen, a plant-like organism that generally clings to rocks, walls, or trees. Here are two verses from a long poem by Kalidasa, who lived at least 1500 years ago and is often considered to be the greatest poet of ancient India. The poem Kumaras Bhava begins with an invocation to the Himalayas. This is simplified translation from the Sanskrit. In north rises Himalaya, the lord of mountains, like a living god, who measures the earth and stretches from the western to eastern ocean. From it, the wind comes down carrying spray from descending Ganga, shaking the deodar trees, opening the peacock's tail feather, and cooling the mountain people after they hunt deer. Deep forests, flowing rivers, lakes, grasslands, and caves in the mountains are home to diverse fauna. For instance, the golden eagle, the Parisian falcon, the Canadian lynx, the snow leopard, the ibex, the Himalayan thar, the mountain hare, the yak, the grey fox, and the black bear. Ganga is the name of the largest river originating in the Himalayas. In English, Ganges is also used nearly 2500 kilometers long. This river has numerous tributaries, that is, other rivers joining it. Some of them, like the Yamuna and the Ghagra, also originated in the Himalayas. Others, like the Son or Son, originate from the Vindhya Ridge to the south of the Ganga Plain. Life in the mountains. The mountain terrain is usually rugged or rough and has a steep slopes. This means that a regular farming can only be practiced in some valleys. Cultivation is practiced on the slopes by cutting steps into slope. Figure 3.5. This is called terrace farming. In many mountainous regions, the wool herding is the preferred occupation over agriculture. Tourism is often an important source of income for the people living in the mountains. The crisp mountains air and scenic beauty attract many tourists. Some tourists also go to the mountains for sports such as cycling, hiking, mountaineering, and paragliding. For many centuries, people have also traveled to these uplands for pilgrimage to holy sites, but an excessive inflow of visitors can also put the fragile mountain environment under pressure. It is often difficult to find the right balance. Bachendri Pal started climbing mountains from a young age and led many women's climbing expeditions. She was the first Indian woman to climb Mount Everest in 1984 and was awarded Padma Shri the same year and Padma Bhushan in 2019. Arunama Sinha lost a leg in an accident when she was 31. With Bachendri Pal's encouragement and training, she managed to climb Mount Everest in 2030 and went on to climb the highest peak of every continent, including Mount Vinson in Antarctica. She was awarded Padma Shri in 2015. Flash flood, a sudden local flood often caused by cloudburst. Landslide, the sudden of collapse of a mass of earth or rock from a mountainside. Avalanche, the sudden fall of snow, ice, or rocks from a mountainous side often occurs when the snow starts melting. Cloudburst, a sudden violent rainstorm. Many traditional communities around the world consider mountains to be sacred places and worship them. Mount Everest, the highest mountain in the world at 8,849 meters, has many names. Tibetans call it Chomolungma, which means Mother Goddess of the World, and worship the mountain as such. Nepalese call it Sagarmatha, meaning goddess of the sky. Similarly, Mount Kailash in Tibet is held sacred by followers of Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Bon, an ancient Tibetan region. Such reverence for mountain summits is also found elsewhere in India as well as in other parts of the world. Plateaus. A plateau is a landform that rises up from the surrounding land and has more or less flat surface. Some of its sides are often steep slopes. Like mountains, plateaus can be young or old in terms of the earth history. Two examples of plateaus are Tibetan Plateau, the largest and the highest plateau in the world, and the Deccan Plateau. The highest plateaus can vary from 100 meters to several thousand meters. The Tibetan Plateau has an average altitude of 4,500 meters, which explains why it has been nicknamed the roof of the world. From east to west, it is nearly 2,500 kilometers long, the distance from Chandigarh to Kanyakumari. The Deccan Plateau of central and south India is one of the oldest plateaus in the world, formed through volcanic activity millions of years ago. Like mountains, plateaus are rich in mineral disposal. They have been called storehouse of minerals. As a result, mining is major activity on plateaus, where many of the world's largest mines are found. For example, the East African plateau is famous for gold and diamond mining. In India, whose huge reserves of iron, coal, and manganese are found in the Chota Nagpur plateau. The plateau environment is very diverse across the world. Many plateaus have a rocky soil, which makes them less fertile than plains. See next section. And therefore, less favorable to farming. An acceptation is that of lava plateaus that is formed through volcanic activity, as they often have a rich black soil. Plateaus are also home to many spectacular waterfalls. The Victoria Falls on the Zambezi River in southern Africa, the Hundru Falls on Subarnarekha River in Chota Nagpur Plateau, and the Jog Falls on the Shoravati River in the Western Ghats are few such waterfalls. The Nohkalikai Falls drop down 340 meters from the Cherrapunji Plateau in Meghalaya. Plains. Plains are landforms that have an extensive flat or generally undulating surface. They do not have any large hills or deep valleys. They are generally not more than 300 meters above sea level. Food plains are one type of plains formed by rivers originating in mountains ranges, where they collect particles of rock and sand and slit called sediments. These sediments are carried all the way to the plains where the river disposes them, making the soil very fertile. As a result, these plains are ideal for growing crops of all kinds, and agriculture is a major economic occupation in this landform. Plains also support a variety of flora and fauna. Life in the plains. Thousands of years ago, the first civilization developed around rivers and fertile plains. In our times too, a large part of the world's population lives in plains. About 40 crore people, more than one fourth of the total Indian population, live in India's Ganga plain, often called the Gangetic plain. As with many other plains of the world, the major occupation of people in this region include river fishing and agriculture. Food crops such as rice, wheat, maize, barley, and millets are grown. Fiber crops such as cotton, jute, and hemp are also grown in the Gangetic Plain. Traditional agriculture has been mostly rain-fed, that is, watered through rainfall. In recent decades, however, agriculture has turned to irrigation, with water brought to the fields through the networks of canals or pumped from groundwater. While irrigation has increased agriculture production, it has also contributed to the depletion or decrease of groundwater. This present a challenge for the future of agriculture in the region. Some of the other problems affecting the Ganga plains include high population and pollution. Whether in mountains, ranges, or plains, rivers around the world have carried immense cultural value. In particular, many communities have considered a river source and its confluence with one or two other rivers to be sacred. In India, numerous festivals, ceremonies, and rituals are conducted at such locations. Because plains have a gentle slope, river navigation is easy and supports a lot of economic activities. In earlier days, people used river extensively to travel from one place to another. Even today, there are stretches along the Ganga where people prefer to use boats to move around. In this chapter, we explored the three main landforms, but its surface is very complex, and experts often define a few more landforms. One such landform is the desert. Deserts are considered to be large and dry expanses with very little precipitation. Their flora and fauna are also unique. Some deserts are hot, like the Sahara Desert in Africa or the Thar Desert in the northwest of India's subcontinent. Others are cold, like the Gobi Desert in Asia. Some experts also describe the Antarctica continent as a desert. Despite harsh living conditions, humans have adapted to most of the deserts. In India, communities living in Thar Desert or migrating through it hold rich cultural traditions such as folk songs and legends related to the desert. The ways in which humans have made all landforms their home is testimony to our adaptability and resilience. The five Tinais of ancient Tamil Sangam poetry are five landscapes associated with certain specific deities, lifestyles, moods, or emotion, such as love, log- longing, separation, quarrel, etc. This table only lists the characteristics of the five landscapes of the main human occupation in each. Kurinji, mountains region, hunting and gathering. Mulai, grasslands and forest, cattle raiding. Marudam, fertile agriculture plains farming. Nayadal, coastal region, fishing and seafaring. Palai, arid desert-like regions, journeying and fighting. These five tenais constitute a different classification of landforms than the one we have seen, but they reflect a keen awareness of the diverse region and their characteristics. They also illustrate the deep connection between humanity and the natural environment. You do not need to remember the details of the tenais, but the concept they reflect need to be understood. Before we move on, landforms are classified into three main types: mountains, plateaus, and plains. They have very different physical characteristics and environments. Throughout history, lives and activities have been much impacted by the type of landform they have lived in. These landforms are an integral part of culture across the world. Indian culture, in particular, has celebrated them in diverse ways. Each landform offers different challenges as well as opportunities.